Hi, this is Guitarist Denis Taaffe, and I'm in my home studio, and I want to welcome you to the making of my 345th album called Vampires. Modern Rock Guitar Vol.345 Vampires. And for those who aren't familiar with my music, basically I'm a guitarist, a solo guitarist, who uses electric guitar and guitar loops done on the fly. Where basically I play something and we got a pedal board that records part of it, starts to loop it, and I layer other sounds on top of it, other guitar sounds. All of my tracks, including this one, this album, are improvised on the spot. In other words, it's recorded live and performed live in the studio. So really what you're hearing, or what you will hear in this album, is exactly how it sounded in the studio room. I just put 2 mics in front of my amplifiers. I play in stereo. And, yeah, I don't add any overdubs after the fact and those kinds of things. And the reason I improvise is you can find some really magical moments. You have to think pretty quickly of, what would sound good. While you're hearing it, you've got to think that and try to play. Now, sometimes, of course, you can hit wrong notes and those kinds of things. But sometimes it works out really well. I've been doing it for quite a while. And beyond that, I guess my first album was recorded in 1999, Modern Rock Guitar Volume 1, Abducted by Aliens. And that was more a conventional recording. And that was kind of a rock album. And there, it was done on a recorder, where I'd play one part, rewind, come up with another part, practice it, and try to record it, and then rewind again and add another part and those kinds of things. Whereas on this album, and in fact every album after the first one, it's more of this looping, and improvisation. When I say improvisation, that doesn't mean just play anything, it has to. Basically what I do is I come up with an idea, whether it be a riff or a series of chords or those kinds of things, and then I work off of that, and as it's looping, I'm listening to it and coming up with ideas. Okay. And I guess one other thing is my from album 1 to 200, I consider those really rock albums. And then kind of my style changed to what I call a instrumental new age rock guitar, if you like. But it really, isn't much rock guitar as it is, what I like to call film music. It's music that I like. As opposed to just standard rock music, like that. And a lot of that had to do with, my style changed over time. Okay. Well, let me tell you, I am so thrilled to be making this video, and one of the big reasons is, luckily, the album was released. Okay, my 345th album, Vampires, was released and is available on Amazon and Spotify and so on and so on. Okay, however, after that, a really bad storm came in. And unfortunately, it took out my computer, where volume 345 was located, as well as the graphics and those kinds of things. So it really caused me a lot of problems, and I really spent, about a week rebuilding the computer. Luckily, the hard drives were okay; they were sound. So basically, I had another computer that was identical, and this was, running the old XP, and XP requires pretty much the same hardware. And basically, I had to go through two similar computers, because it turns out the next one had a problem with the video card, and so on and so on and so on. To make a long story short, it took a week. And it's very important to me because while we're doing the making of volume 345, that computer also had volume 346 recordings on it. So as you can imagine, I was really kind of in trouble there. Unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to back it up or anything, and the power went out, and unfortunately there was a surge of electricity, and it really basically fried the motherboard of that computer, unfortunately. However, we're back up and running, and that's just such a relief, and so I'm very pleased about that. Okay, so I've got the lights out here, right? It's pretty appropriate for this album. Of course, it's called Vampires, which are, usually in the horror movies and those kinds of things. Now, very far away, when I was naming these titles and things, I had the movie Underworld, vampire versus lichens movie, in mind, vaguely. Okay, and just because some of the tracks kind of remind me, I thought, boy, that's kind of a spooky, that kind of thing. Not all of it. I mean, it's not a real dark album, which is, I'm very pleased about that, I mean, it's still very enjoyable to listen to. And it's been a while now since I recorded it. Okay, so let's talk about the album cover real quick. And that was after I made the recordings, I found a album cover. It was a graphic, it's kind of a public domain. It wasn't created by me. Though what I did do is I added, of course, a guitar in the moon and a little face, on the driver there, and added a guitar, like the horse was carrying a guitar, basically. Kind of bizarre, I suppose, but I liked it. It was a lot of fun to do. And of course it says, I'm on Rock Guitar Vol.345 Vampires and Guitarist Denis Taaffe. And I really want to clarify that. I remember a musician friend of mine said, well, you can't do that. You can't say Guitarist Denis Taaffe. I thought, well, why not? The reason I do that is very simple, and I've mentioned it in other videos. Again, it's not because I think I'm like the greatest guitarist in the world, that kind of thing. So I call myself Guitarist Denis Taaffe. That isn't it at all. In fact, it's much simpler than that. When I was growing up, okay, I always looked for guitar albums. When I would go to music stores, CD stores, and those kinds of things. And I'd flip through, was this a guitar album? Maybe. Well, maybe not. And a perfect example of that I always use is Al Di Meola, Elegant Gypsy. Well, I didn't know who Al Di Meola was. I'd never heard of him. Right? When I was growing up, Yet it's a great guitar album, But it was called Elegant Gypsy. And it's like, Elegant Gypsy? What is that? Is this a guitar album? I guess I think from what I remember, an acoustic guitar on the cover. So here, you can't possibly not realize that this is a guitar album, right? It's done by Guitarist, Denis, Taaffe, Modern Rock Guitar Vol.345. So anyway, that's the reason why. In case you're wondering. Yeah, it's quite simple. It's just I want to make it easy for people to realize that it's a guitar album. Whereas I often found, when I was going through record bins and those kinds of things, man, I had a really tough time looking for that. Now, obviously, if I knew who the guitarist was, that'd be a different story. But I remember, some kind of obscure albums, I guess, were a lot harder to find, or guitarists I didn't know, and, well, they didn't say it was a guitar album, kind of like that Elegant Gypsy. It's a fine album title, but it sure as heck doesn't help you discover that's a guitar album. Okay, alright, so let's move on. Let's get into this album. Thank goodness. And it almost wasn't going to happen. I was really despaired. The computer problem, I thought it took out a bunch of memory, RAM memory, but turns out, no, it was the motherboard I discovered. So, what a pain. I basically had to rebuild 2 computers to finally get it to work, because before, on the first computer, I was getting this, blue screen of death, right? You have to boot into safe mode, and just a big mess, big hassle, and it came at the wrong time. Especially I was recording on that computer as well. Now, of course, I have other computers I can record to, but that was my main one. And then to add to the fury, one of the hard drives, the SATA pins broke off, and by some miracle I had a little conversion kit that took care of that. I was able to transfer things over, which is great. Okay, anyway, here we are. Thank goodness. So let's take a listen to this album. And it begins with the first track. And one thing I really should mention, and I don't think people realize that, is that one, of course, as I mentioned, it's all improvised. Basically I just turn on the recorder and come up with an idea and then work off of that. And it's great because I'm playing by myself, I can basically guide it in a musical direction, as best I can. Sometimes it works really well, other times, not so good, and sometimes I fall flat on my face, and it sounds crappy. Excuse my French. Okay, so here we are, and the first track is called Vampires, Part 1. And in fact, it's really because of this track and similar tracks on the album that I called it Vampires, and you'll see why. And remember, all the sounds are guitar based, okay, and they're not done with any kind of MIDI guitar, you know, that's triggering a sample or that kind of thing. So, you know, I'd love to call them organically based, if you like, you know, or analog, though they're not quite analog, they're actually digital effects a lot of times. Alright, so let's get to it. Okay, this first track is called Vampires Part 1, and it's 4 minutes and 53 seconds long. Let's take a listen to that. And this is done on guitar and looped, actually, and it's actually an Eventide H9. It's a hot sauce algorithm, and to me it makes such a great intro. It's very dark, it's very scary in a way, as if you're in the vampire's lair. Right? Luckily, though, they're all asleep in their coffins, so don't have to worry too much. There was a little glitch. It doesn't track all that well. But... Okay, now I've added another layer there. So there I've got a couple layers going. And let's fast forward that to the 3-minute mark. Now there I've layered clean guitar over that, delayed guitar with playing patterns here. Yeah. So you see, while that's very dark and dissonant, right? You know, while it's really dark and dissonant, it's still, you know, to the ear, very musical. To my ear, anyway. So it comes out, you know, a very good track, not, you know, super dissonant to the point of being not musical, you know. So it's definitely, you know, not an ambient track, if you like. Now, just for fun, track 2 is a different story. And it's called Sewer Tunnels. And if you remember in the original, I think it's Underworld, the Lycans were living in tunnels. And the vampire went down there. Alright? To take care of business. So, this is, you know, this is, I think, as close really as I come to ambient sounds. And really that's what it is. But it creates a mood and atmosphere, and that's what my music is all about. Is creating moods and atmosphere. So let's take a listen to that. And as I recall, it's kind of bizarre sounds, guitar sounds. Let's hear it. Here we go. Starts out with a gigantic reverb here. And making strange noises. Now, if I was doing a film and there was a frightening scene, you know, especially in a sewer tunnel, for example, you know, there we go. Uh-oh. Yeah. Now there, that thing, it sounds like it kind of hits the guitar. this is a pretty short track. It's 2 minutes and 43 seconds long. There you go. So basically, it's one chord, the whole song, if you want to call it that. But I actually really like it. Somehow it resonates with me. It sounds musical to my ears in a way. You know, it's the usual stuff. Anyway, so there you go. There's my ambient track. Now this next track is kind of fun. And in real opposition to the ambient track and the first track, which is really dark. You know. And here we go. We have the, I imagined, you know. Now this is after the fact that I record. When I was recording, I wasn't thinking that at all, you know. I was kind of in my own world. And then later on, after recording, I heard it and listened. And here we go. Number 3 is the poor innocent victim waking up, and it's called Flowers in the Morning. Now, I did kind of a sloppy job on the looping, you know, especially the end and where it starts a little bit. So it's not quite as smooth as I had wanted it to be. But, and I was going to cut that out, in fact, the very beginning, because I thought that. However, it's such a stark difference, you know, after following sewer tunnels, you know, and it really sounds like, oh, well, here we go, it's a wonderful day, you know, in the neighborhood, right? And it's just a nice day, you know, basically a nice morning, and you've just gotten up or whatever, looking forward to the day ahead. All right, and it's pretty short. It's 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Let's hear that. Here we go. So in a film, of course, it'd be the hero of the movie, you know, waking up, you know, getting, I don't know, some guy, you know, the hero of the movie, he's getting on his bicycle to go to school or something, you know, grabbing up breakfast as he goes, something like that. You know, I mean, that's what I imagine when I hear it. You know, and then you've got that bass line, which is actually guitar. You know, and what I like about that bass line and why I kept it in, I tried a couple different times. That's why it kind of stops there. And luckily, because of the guitar patterns was there, the delayed guitar, I was able to, you know, keep that in there, because I stopped playing bass line and then tried again. And what I was going for is, I didn't want to play just droning root notes, you know. Instead, I wanted to play like riffs, you know, bass riffs. Of course, I'm not a bassist, but, and to me it does sound like bass, but it's actually done on guitar. And in fact, it's not the Eventide pedals at all. It's a Line 6 M5 pedal. And I think it does sound like a bass, and so I loop that. So that gives you kind of a, you know, pleasant morning mood to me, or atmosphere, it sounded like. Okay, now, Here is a track that is really long. I mean, we're talking 15 minutes, right? And you see that'd be the only 15-minute track on the album, but that would be incorrect because the last track is also 14 minutes and 50 seconds. So basically, just in those 2 tracks out of 9 tracks, you've got a half hour, of the album, and the rest of the tracks take up pretty much the other half hour because the album, I think, is actually quite short. It's actually 48 minutes and 44 seconds. Okay, so this next one is called The Hunt, right? And in this case, it's vampires, and they need their blood fix, right? So they're searching for victims. And as I recall, I think this was when they're going through the woods, searching for their victim. Okay, let's take a listen to that. Yep. Okay, now here I'm looping a bass line, and then I'm playing guitar on top of it. Right? It's clean guitar with a delay on it. And then here I actually loop that and adding harmonics on top of that. Of the track, and now I'm adding layers on top of that. But let's fast forward a bit since this is such a long track. Okay, here's the 6-minute mark, and as you can see, there's quite a few layers going on. There's all the looping things that are still going on, but here I've also added a guitar with a large reverb sound on it. Right. And you can hear also pattern playing, which is a repeated guitar patterns with a delay. And to me, it almost reminds me, if you listen closely, it reminds me very much of like the cover, right? Some guy in ancient times, and he's driving one of those, horse and buggies. So that kind of tick, tack, 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 tack. Kind of like a horse, Okay, and then on top of that, a lot of chord voicings, clean chord voicings. Sound, a lot of swelled guitar where you hit a note, right? So you don't hear the pick attack and then turn up the volume. It gives you this kind of swelly note sound. And then I'm just putting little fills in. Fast forward that a little bit. 11:33. Of course, a layer of synthesized guitar right here. That's that M-type pedal again. like about that track is, well, it's 15 minutes long, and I mean, there's a bunch of different layers going on there and different sounds as well. However, for that many layers and that many different sounds, it doesn't sound cluttered. You know, and I think that sometimes, you know, when I'm adding so many layers and different sounds, you know, it starts to get cluttered. You know, and part of that's, I think, just maturing as a musician, you know, to leave some space and things, and realize that there are, you know, you can't just take everything and mesh it all up, you know, which I've done plenty, believe me. So I like it in the fact that, yeah, it has a lot of layers and yet doesn't sound cluttered. Okay, next track. Oh no. It's called The Coffin. Okay, and it's actually a very short track. It's only 1 minute and 41 seconds. Let's hear that. As I remember, it's probably pretty dark to be called The Coffin. Let's take a listen. Oh no. Uh-oh. Frightening. Now this reminds me very much of the beginning of The Shining, right? Kind of Stanley Kubrick kind of a soundtrack. Now it's very dark, but if you listen to it, it's very different, you know, from the first track. It's also very dark, but in a different way. And here, besides keyboard sounding things on guitar, I also added some, you know, minor chord arpeggio type things, chordal arpeggios, if you like. Yeah. So while I thought this was a pretty short track, I really think it needed to be on the album because it fits so well, you know. It really creates a definite mood there, for sure. Alright, now the next track is called The Sun Sets. You know what that means. Uh-oh. Right? Keep your children inside. No one's safe out there, really. You know, so the sun sets and the vampires come out to feed and find victims. So let's take a listen to that. Ah, yes. I like this track very much. Very much like this track. And here, basically you've got a layer of bass, layer of rhythm guitar, and then of course the little swelled parts above. And same kind of thing, there are little parts where the looping at the end kind of cuts off real abruptly, and that's my mistake. However, I left it in there because I just really like the mood and atmosphere of this track. Well, it's very short. Yeah. And a lot of that, they're not harmonics, but I'm playing voicings, but instead of strumming them, I'm actually plucking. Right? Get a kind of almost a piano type sound. Whereas you grab we go. Here's the woods. And man, you know that the moon is out, right? And it's in the dark woods there, right? The unassuming victim is just walking home, maybe, through the woods. Alright, let's take a listen to that. Also another pretty short track. 2 minutes and 58 seconds long. Let's hear it. Uh-oh. No good, man. The guy's toast, let's face it. He's starting to run through the woods. And there's a vampire after him. He doesn't know what it is, though. So, here we go. You've got that bass sound, which is still guitar. Repeating riff. Here on the guitar, you'll hear it sounds far away to create that kind of mood and atmosphere. Haunting quality, if you like, right, of the guitar there. Yeah. And there you can still hear the pattern playing, but it's very distant sounding. Rather than being, up close in your face. Oh, I very much like this track too. Yeah. Okay, now I've added a third track after looping the distant guitar. And you can hear it. It almost sounds like a keyboard. These layers. And there I've added swells and things. And when you hear it, it really sounds kind of like a keyboard. It creates that mood, kind of a haunting mood. For being such a short track, it's really kind of a cool guitar track, especially when you think that's all improvised and done on guitar, It very much sounds like a keyboardy track, but I love the atmosphere it creates. It's very good, I think. That's what I'm going for when I'm creating music, It has to have a cinematic quality. And I think a lot of modern music today that I hear anyway, it is not very cinematic at all. What do I mean by cinematic? I mean music that I could imagine in a film, And I don't mean the novelty, Here's a famous artist, let's put his pop song in the movie, for the soundtrack. That's not what I'm talking about. And I'm not talking about sound effects. But just a great example of film music, for me anyway, is the movie Thief. Right? And there, if you listen to some of the music there, is very good. Okay. Anyway. Next one is called the Cast No Shadows, right? Obviously referring to the vampires who, at least in old movies, they walk by a mirror and they wouldn't have a shadow, which is pretty scary. Okay, let's hear that. That's a pretty short track. Truth is, I kind of had a hard time finding a title for this one. I couldn't place the mood or atmosphere all that well. Let's take a listen to it. Yeah. It still has that dark quality. and playing, but it's more kind of almost arpeggiated. And then on top of that is another guitar. I'm just playing chord voicings. Just like the atmosphere that track creates. Okay, and now finally the last track on the album, and it's 14 minutes and 50 seconds long, and it's called The Vampire Clan, and it pretty much sums up the entire album. Let's hear it. Here we go. I mean, you can, boy, that atmosphere, you can almost smell this stench of vampires. So here, when I hear it, I do think you're very much, in the midst of not just one vampire, but a whole colony of vampires. Here they are. And of course, these are chord swells, where I turn down the volume, strum a chord, and then turn up the volume, and it creates that kind of keyboard sound, and then I loop that, and there, take a listen closely, you'll hear now I'm adding a bass line on top of that. Okay, let's fast forward to, 8-minute mark. Now here I've added a keyboard type sound. And it's played on guitar, but it's you have to be kind of subtle with it, or it'll take over the whole track. You got that keyboard loop, and then that little, there you go, right here. So I added it kind of just to add accents to it, if you like. If you ever seen Bob Ross paint, and he's always talking about, oh, well, here, we'll add a little tree right over here. Just a little. Okay? And then he adds just a tiny bit of white, to this green tree. Same idea here with a little keyboard sounding thing right here. Little synth lead. Fast forward again, 12 minutes 45 seconds. You're finally escaping the castle with all the vampires. And here I've added a delayed guitar, of course. And what I really like about this track is it starts out really kind of dark and, not frightening, but creates that kind of eerie atmosphere. And yet it's still very musical, to my ears anyway. Especially the ending as it develops, especially adding that, guitar pattern, playing the clean guitar with a delay on it, stereo delay there. Yeah, to me, I really like that track for that very reason, that it, the contrast as it develops and makes it musical, and to me, it would fit so well in a film, I would think. I mean, when I hear it, I definitely hear that cinematic quality, and the atmosphere it creates. I mean, I can really imagine, watching a film and, seeing the castle and walking through and seeing all these, coffins, and they're all vampires, that kind of thing. And the hero has, of course, his wooden stake and so on, Alright, so there you go. There it is. That's the making of Modern Rock Guitar Vol.345 Vampires. And for me, I can say I'm really pleased with this album. I think in a few spots, I was a little carefree with the looping, especially where it kind of cut off prematurely, or I wouldn't say prematurely, but abruptly, if you like, or where the loop stops and then starts again. That's definitely something I could work on. But I'm very pleased with the sounds and the moods and atmosphere it creates. And one thing I'm very pleased about is, to my ears, a very musical album, and even when there's a ton of loops going on, it's not very cluttered. And though I have to say, that here I tried to really use some different sounds, but there are certainly sounds that I rely on, and they're presets on my pedal board, so I suppose in the future, I'd like to definitely experiment and try some, more sounds that I haven't tried before, and have a lot of ideas on how to get those. It just takes time, I guess. And that's about it, really, for this album. I'm very pleased, though. I think it's a very solid album, and while it's dark, it's musical, and it won't, send you into a deep depression, right? Because it's so gloomy or anything like that. It's not like that at all, really. It's actually quite musical album, and even the darker tracks still have this light quality to it, or uplifting and inspiring music, if you like. So I'm very pleased with that, yeah, I think for the listener, definitely flows very well, as well. And, as far as the, the story, you know, from track to track. You know, that's really my invention. When you hear it, you know, you don't have to think about vampires and things. But just to my ears, when I hear these things, you know, it reminds me of films I watched, or I could imagine them in a film, you know. Definitely have that mood quality, mood and atmosphere, and yeah, that's about it. But anyway, it has this mood and atmosphere, right? And yet it's very musical on there. So there you go. And notice I did the whole album without any real guitar solos. And actually I'm quite pleased about that as well. You know, a lot of times, you know, when I would do long tracks, especially on some of my earlier albums, you know, a lot of it was you know, basically a 10-minute, 15-minute jam, you know, or solo and solo and solo and solo, you know, over whatever a rhythm track or that kind of thing. But here there really was, you know, no kind of a jam, if you like, you know. And so I'm very pleased about that as far as improvisation goes. So there you go, and you know, it's available pretty much at Amazon, Spotify. So there you go. There's Rock Guitar Vol.345 Vampires. Alright, see you next time. Bye.